Kelly, and this is the owner's class for the Singer Legacy C440 sewing machine. Today we're going to go through a couple of the basic things to get you started sewing, like how to thread your machine and how to select a stitch. Included in your box is the instruction manual and this really handy quick start guide. Both of these will prove to be a great reference for you in the future, so want to hang on to those. Now let's take a quick look at your machine. To the right of your machine are two ports. One is for your power cord and the other is for your foot control. This is also where you'll find the power switch. Now we can lift up the lid, and this is where you'll thread your machine and wind a bobbin. We'll get to more of that in a minute. But also you'll note underneath your lid, this shows all of the 200 stitches that come on your machine. And they each are separated by categories, like your decorative stitches, satin stitches, quilt stitches, and more. On the front of your machine is your LCD screen and your direct stitch selection buttons, and we'll go into more detail on those later. To the left of your machine are your operational buttons. The top button here is your tack off button, and that's also to tie off stitches. This is your needle up down button for when you want to pivot your fabric while you're quilting or doing applique. These two buttons are your speed control buttons, tortoise and the hare. Tortoise to go slower, the hare to go faster. My favorite button is our thread cutter button. This is your reverse button. And finally, this is your start-stop button when you want to sew without using your foot control. Under here is your presser foot lifter. This raises and lowers your presser foot. Whenever we're threading, we want to keep this in the up position. And then whenever we go to sew, we'll lower it. Also under here is your automatic needle threader, which threads your thread through the eye of your needle. This is the removable storage compartment. So when we take this off, this shows you your free arm. And this is great for when you want to hem a pair of pants or sew the cuff on your shirt, because your fabric can move underneath. And at the end of your storage compartment, there's a small lever here that if you squeeze it, a drawer will open. And inside here are all of the accessories included with your machine, like some extra needles, your spool cap, some bobbins, a brush to keep your machine clean, and then a bunch of accessory feet that are included, which we're going to take a look at now. The satin stitch foot is used for decorative machine stitching. It has a groove on the underside that lets your decorative stitches pass freely underneath. It's great for applique too. The overcasting foot is designed for sewing along fabric edges to help keep the edge from puckering while you sew. Use the blind hem foot to sew hems that are invisible from the top side of the fabric. There's an adjustable guide at the front to help you easily guide the fabric as you sew. The zipper foot is used for sewing zippers into your projects. You can also use this foot to make and insert piping. Use the buttonhole foot to sew buttonholes in one easy step. The machine sews a buttonhole perfectly sized for your button. You'll get professional looking results every time. The patchwork foot is used for sewing perfect 1/4-inch seams. Though typically used for quilting, it's also useful for sewing projects that have small seam allowances. Sew buttons on your projects with the button sewing foot. Your button is held firmly in place as the machine attaches the button to your project with a zigzag stitch. The open toe foot has a wide opening at the front, providing a clear view of your sewing area in front of the needle. This is super helpful when attaching ribbons and trims. Before we get started sewing, we need to thread our machine. So the first thing we need to do is wind a bobbin. So we're going to go down here to our bobbin case, and there's a little black button to the right that we're just going to slightly press to the right, which will pop the top off there. And now we'll take out one of our Class 15 transparent bobbins that comes with your machine. Just in case you ever need to go buy more, for the Class 15 transparent bobbins. Next thing we need to do is grab our spool of thread. We're going to lift the lid on our sewing machine and put our spool of thread on the spool pin. And then we'll cover that with our spool cap. We're going to lay our spool of thread down, and then taking your thread, we're going to go under this metal piece right here. So we're going to go all the way down and under. And then you're going to go up and over between the metal piece and the white piece here. The next step is to go to this metal hook right there and go behind that, and then up and around your bobbin winding tension disc And you'll want to feel a little tension. It'll slide into that disc and you'll feel some tension, which is a good thing. Now we're going to take one of our bobbins and then we're going to take the end of our thread and we're going to go through to the core of the bobbin and up through one of the two holes in your bobbin. Doesn't matter which one. So now we're going to take our bobbin and we're going to put it on top of our bobbin winding spindle at the top of your machine. And you want to make sure that you press that all the way down. I'm going to keep my thread tail about 5 inches above the bobbin. And then I'm going to push over our lever before we start winding our bobbin. And now our screen will show our bobbin winding speed, so we can speed up or we can speed down. Now we can hit the play button and go for just a couple of seconds and then hit pause. I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to cut our thread really close to the top of our bobbin. And now we can resume winding our bobbin until we get as much thread on there as we need for our project. And then you can pause at any time and undo what you just did by pushing the lever to the left. We can remove our bobbin, and there's a really nice cutter right back there that works great for cutting your bobbin. So now we're going to take our bobbin and we're going to put it into our bobbin case. One thing to note is we need to make sure our thread is going counterclockwise off the bobbin, or if you want to lay it in your hand, it kind of looks like the letter P. So now you're going to take your thread and your bobbin and lay your bobbin down into the bobbin case. And then we're going to follow these arrows all the way around. So we're going to go under and then up, again following the arrows. And then we're going to slide into this next little portion and go up and down. And then we're going to finish by just pulling, and there's a small cutter there that will cut your thread for you. So the last thing is to take our lid and just snap it back into place. Now we're going to thread our upper thread. First thing we need to do is make sure that our presser foot lifter is in the up position. Next thing we need to do is make sure that our needle is all the way in its highest position, and we do that by moving the hand wheel toward yourself. Now we can take our spool of thread, and we can put it on our spool pin here and cover with our cap. And then lay our spool down. Now taking your thread, we're going to go under the metal piece here. And then we're going to follow the arrows around to thread our machine. So we're going to go up, and again follow the arrows over, and then down. And now we're going to make a U right here, and go back up, and make another U, and then come back down through the last groove here. And then when you get to this point, you'll see a hook, a small hook right above your needle. And so we just need to place our thread behind that hook. So now we're going to use the automatic needle threader. We're going to take the lever to the left of your needle and push it all the way down. And then taking your thread, you're going to go under the metal piece here, and we're going to go right in between the two small grooves there in front of your eye of your needle. And then we're going to just press the lever and let it go back up. And now you'll see it makes a little loop on the back of the needle, so we can just pull that, and now your machine is threaded. Then you can take your thread under your foot to the back of your machine. Our machine is threaded, so now we can go ahead and select our stitch. You've got two options on your screen. The top one is a box for our continuous stitches. The bottom box is for our programmable stitches. We're going to go ahead and select the top box. And as you see, your machine automatically defaults to a straight stitch on your screen, which that'll be perfect for when we test to make sure that we've threaded our machine properly. So I've got a couple of pieces of scrap fabric here, and I'm just going to lay that underneath our presser foot, and then we're going to lower our presser foot down over our fabric. And I'm going to take the speed down so that I'm not sewing so fast, and you can do that by using your tortoise or your hair, and I'm going to take it all the way down to the lowest speed. And so now we can start sewing. So our presser foot is down, and now we're just going to press on the foot pedal with your foot, and we can just sew a line through our sample fabric. When we get to the end, we can let off the foot pedal, and then we can hit my favorite button, which is our thread cutter, and then lift up your presser foot, And then we can check our stitches. The top looks good, and the bottom looks good. And I've got a sample over here to show what could go wrong. So the top looks fine, but then our bottom looks a little bit messy. So if you have the bottom of your fabric looking a little messy or loopy like this, you'll want to try to rethread your upper thread. You may think it's the bobbin because it's the bottom, but it's actually your upper thread that needs to be rethreaded through your machine. And you can always refer to your quick start guide or your manual to go through that process again. We've checked our thread and we know that we've threaded our machine properly, so now we can take a couple of sheets of our project fabric and we can move it up underneath our presser foot. And when we do so, you can also see on your stitch plate the various markings. I'm going to use a 5/8 inch for my seam allowance, so I'm going to line my fabric up with the 5/8 inch marking, and then I can lower my presser foot lever, and my presser foot is now down, holding my fabric in place. And then I can depress the foot pedal. And we're going to go a couple of stitches, and then I'm going to hold and depress our reverse button so that it'll go back over the stitches, and it'll secure our stitches so that our project won't come apart. And now we'll just keep sewing our seam. We're going to hold and depress that reverse button again and go back over a few stitches and then finish. And now we can hit our thread cutter and lift our presser foot and check out our seam. Below your screen are 10 direct stitch selection buttons, 0 to 9, and they include your straight stitch, a zigzag, a blind hem. All of these are just the most frequently used stitches that are ready at the touch of a button. So let's select our zigzag stitch number 1, and you can see it appear on the screen. And next to that is our stitch width, which we can change to be bigger or smaller. We can also change our stitch length, and again you'll see this change right on screen. There's a mirror left, right, and a mirror up, down button here. So let's use one of our other stitches to show that. And remember, inside your lid, we have all of our stitches numbered. So I'm going to use stitch number 82 and just press that in quick succession, and you'll see some roses pop up on our screen. So now if I hit the left, right mirror button, you'll see it change on the screen, and then if I hit the up, down mirror button, it changes on our screen. Let's sew out another decorative stitch. I'm going to select one of my favorites, which is number 190, which is a vine pattern. And you see it's already popped up on my screen. Also on my screen you'll see that there is a B for our presser foot. So it's suggesting that we change to our satin stitch foot. So to change our foot, we reach around to the back side, we press this little black button, and that releases our foot. So we can move that one away and bring in our satin stitch foot. And we're going to place that underneath our presser foot holder, and it kind of looks like a little claw that will reach down and grab our foot. And now our foot is changed. We're ready to sew out our decorative stitch now. So I've got some fabric here, and I'm going to put it underneath my presser foot, and then I'm going to lower my presser foot and depress on our foot pedal. Now that we're at the end, we can press our thread cutter button and lift our presser foot and check out our work. And I can always change this stitch to be wider or longer using our width and length on screen. So if I want to make my leaves a little farther apart and I want to make the width a little closer together, let's see what that looks like. We're going to press our thread cutter button here and lift our presser foot, and we can look at our work now. So you can see the two different stitches. They're exactly the same stitch, but with just changing our stitch width and our stitch length, we've changed the stitch, so the possibilities are endless. One of the really cool things on this machine is that we can program our own combination of stitches. So to do that, we're going to press on the house or the home button to go to the home menu. And now we can select the bottom box, which is our programmable stitches. I have a project and I want to put my dog's name on it. His name is Duke. And I'd also like to include a couple of stitches of a dog. So we have a stitch number 112 on this machine. That's a cute little dog. Now I want to type his name. So to do that, you'll press on the letter A, which will bring up your alphabet menu. And the block lettering is already selected, so all I have to do is press OK. And now I'm going to type in his name, D-U-K-E. And then press OK. Also down here, we have our capital letters. We can switch to lowercase letters or to our numbers and punctuation. Since I've got his name already typed out, I'm just going to press OK. And then to end the stitch, I want another dog, so I'm going to press 112. And now I want this dog facing in the opposite direction, so I can hit my mirror button. And now I have dogs facing in different directions. So to end this stitch, so that I only stitch it out once, I can press the small circular button here, and that's our tie-off button. Now it's ready to stitch. I really like this design and I want to use it on a couple of different projects in the future. So I'm going to save this to my sewing machine's memory. And to do that, we press on the save icon at the top. And you see I have two memories here, so we're going to select the first memory and then press OK and press OK one more time. And now in the top right corner in our folder, you see that it shows I have one project saved or one sequence of stitches saved to our machine. So even if I turn my machine off, my sequence is still there. Now would be a great time to make a buttonhole. First thing we need to do when making a buttonhole is selecting which buttonhole we'd like to use for our project. On the inside of your lid, there's a whole category called buttonhole, and you have a variety of different buttonholes to choose from a bar tack buttonhole to an eyelet. So for my project, I want to use buttonhole 18. To select our bar tack buttonhole, we're going to go to our continuous stitches button, which is at the top, and we're going to type in the number 18. Now let's pick out our fabric and set it up to make a buttonhole. I've selected a wool fabric to do my buttonhole on, and inside I have a small piece of interfacing, very common when we're making garments. And so now I want to mark where I want my buttonhole to be on my fabric. So I'm going to take my button and place it on the fabric in the location I want it to be. And now I'm going to take a marking pencil and mark a straight line right at the top of your button. Now we can take a ruler, and down from that, we're going to make another line, creating a T. And this will indicate where we want our buttonhole placement. So now I'm ready to start my buttonhole, and the screen lets me know that I need to switch my presser foot to the presser foot F, which is our buttonhole foot. So let's do that now. The machine indicated that we needed to switch our presser foot to the F foot, which is our buttonhole foot. On this foot, you'll see that there's a slider at the top, and that's to accommodate our button. So all you do is put your button in there and slide so it's snugly in the top, and that will let the foot know how big it's to sew out your buttonhole. The foot also has an underplate, and that helps keep your fabric nice and secure, and it creates kind of a sandwich for your fabric while the buttonhole stitches out. So now we need to go ahead and change our foot, just like we did earlier. Press the back button, and then slide our other foot out. Since this foot is a little larger, you may have to lift your presser foot up just a little extra higher. but otherwise it goes on exactly the same as your other feet. And you'll let the presser foot fall down and snap into place. Our buttonhole foot is now on, so we can slide our fabric in between the bottom underplate and the buttonhole foot. And what you want to do is line the top of your tee up into the center of your foot where there's an opening right underneath that needle. And now we can lower our presser foot. The last thing we need to do before we start sewing out our buttonhole is we need to lower the buttonhole lever. And that's to the back of your machine behind your automatic needle threader. And it's silver. We're going to pull that all the way down so that it goes in between the two white parts of your buttonhole foot. Now to sew out the buttonhole, I'm just going to step on my foot control and the machine will start doing the work for me. When the buttonhole is finished sewing, it will automatically stop, and then it will tack down a stitch, and then it will even trim the buttonhole for me. So now we can lift our presser foot and look at our beautiful buttonhole. And here's a quick tip when you're cutting your buttonhole open, is to place a pin right beneath the bar tack right there, and then we can use our seam ripper and open up our buttonhole. But the pin prevents us from going too far and cutting into our stitches. For different types of sewing and different types of fabrics, we have to change our needles from time to time, but it's really, really easy. Just grab the needle with your left hand, and then with your right hand, use a screwdriver. And then we're going to just turn to the left or counterclockwise until our needle is loosened. Now we can get our new needle. And then we're just going to make sure that the flat side is facing toward the back of your machine. And then we're going to put that up in the same spot until it won't go any further, all the way up. And now we can tighten our screw back to the right. Having the right needle for the fabric that you're sewing is really important. There are two basic styles. The first style are universal regular point needles, and these are for your non-stretchy fabrics like cotton or wool or even silk. You'll also notice that there's different sizes. These are for different fabric weights, like lightweight fabric, medium weight fabric, or heavyweight fabric. The other basic style of needle are our ballpoint needles, and these are for stretchy fabrics, like your t-shirts or sweatshirts or swimsuit fabric. And again, these will come in an assortment of different sizes depending on the weight of your fabric, for lightweight, medium weight, and heavyweight. We hope you've enjoyed this owner's class for your new sewing machine. Be sure to check out the Singer website for more information. Happy sewing! Hi, I'm Kelly, and this is the owner's class for the Singer Legacy C440 sewing machine. Today we're going to go through a couple of the basic things to get you started sewing, like how to thread your machine and how to select a stitch. Included in your box is the instruction manual and this really handy quick start guide. Both of these will prove to be a great reference for you in the future, so want to hang on to those. Now let's take a quick look at your machine. To the right of your machine are two ports. One is for your power cord and the other is for your foot control. This is also where you'll find the power switch. Now we can lift up the lid, and this is where you'll thread your machine and wind a bobbin. We'll get to more of that in a minute. But also you'll note underneath your lid, this shows all of the 200 stitches that come on your machine. And they each are separated by categories, like your decorative stitches, satin stitches, quilt stitches, and more. On the front of your machine is your LCD screen and your direct stitch selection buttons, and we'll go into more detail on those later. To the left of your machine are your operational buttons. The top button here is your tack off button, and that's also to tie off stitches. This is your needle up down button for when you want to pivot your fabric while you're quilting or doing applique. These two buttons are your speed control buttons. Tortoise and the hare. Tortoise to go slower, the hare to go faster. My favorite button is our thread cutter button. This is your reverse button. And finally, this is your start-stop button when you want to sew without using your foot control. Under here is your presser foot lifter. This raises and lowers your presser foot. Whenever we're threading, we want to keep this in the up position. And then whenever we go to sew, we'll lower it. Also under here is your automatic needle threader, which threads your thread through the eye of your needle. This is the removable storage compartment. So when we take this off, this shows you your free arm. And this is great for when you want to hem a pair of pants or sew the cuff on your shirt, because your fabric can move underneath.